We should never allow the government to decide what is acceptable speech and what is unacceptable speech. We should penalize behaviors, not opinions, and not speech. If you start trying to regulate speech, you start trying to regulate thoughts, you start trying to regulate beliefs rather than behaviors, there's no way that you're not going to abridge the constitutional rights of millions of Americans.
This video that I'm making is to emphasize that if we don't remember what happened to the children in Aleppo, to little Omran and what he went through, we only remember how they are now. Thank goodness they're safe, they're protected, they aren't in pain, they're not suffering. But if we don't remember how it all began, if we don't remember what they went through, then it'll just keep happening over and over because people will forget. And I would say most everybody in America has already done that. Today in this country, when you bring up the name Omran Dagnish, you might have a half a dozen people who even remember. But the majority of the people in this country don't remember anything. And I hear all over the world, I hear from different people who still remember Omran and what he went through in Aleppo and the other children who suffered in the weeks and the months after the attacks in 2016. And you know, they use the entire thing as an exploitation of war, and then others like Obama used it as a PR gimmick to help push himself in the public eye as being concerned, being interested in these children who were hurt in these attacks by the Russians, and the whole thing was just used for an end to a means by the politicians. And since that time, people just haven't really thought it was important anymore to even bring it up. But that's why, for me, I want to keep sharing about this story, because one day I know there are going to be people who will want to know more about what happened to Omran and to his family. And these are the last pictures I ever received from Abu Ali, Omran's father, in Aleppo. Now he did close his Twitter account, but I'm seeing indications that he is still out there on Twitter watching. He has two different accounts that I found in the last month, meaning that even though he doesn't want to have that interaction like he was having with the public, I think he still is interested in wanting to know what happened to the majority of the world. How do they still relate to Omran, if they even say anything? I'm hoping that through my videos that I post, that he'll see that people have been touched by this in such an exponential way, that it's not something that's a fad. It's not something that just happened and some people remember it and then others don't. I still truly believe that the more we bring this subject up, the more you'll keep the public's awareness open that suffering continues around the world in different ways. You've got the exploitation of children in certain countries. You've got slaves. Slavery still exists in certain parts of the world. And definitely still children suffer in other parts of the United States and in the world itself, where they're using biological weapons or using children to exploit one side of a war or the other. I'd say that's why Omran was seen by so many people, because they were hoping to gain sympathy from the world for the cause of the rebels who were fighting against Assad. And to this day, Assad himself, who's the president of Syria, has said this never happened. He still says that what happened to little Omran Daknish did not happen at all. They say that's a fake photograph. But then you reach out to his father, you reach out to other people who were there, and what do you get? You get a true picture. It was true, it was real, it did still happen to Omran. It still happened to his brother Abdullah, it happened to his older sister Roa. They all went through these things. You saw them in the ambulance, and the tragedy is that in America there's not been one network that's ever brought this subject up. You've got other countries, Sweden, Russia itself, have done, even New China TV have done stories since Omran's father came forward and told the public and told the world that Omran is safe, he's okay, he's not hurting anymore, he's doing fine. But I try and hope that maybe we might learn more facts about what happened to him after he was in the hospital. Did he have complications from his injuries? How did he recover? How was his recuperation period, as far as how did he cope? Because if you remember, after they lost their home, you think, where did they live all that time up until last year in 2017, when we finally heard from his father in June? Up until that point, nobody had heard from Omran for almost a whole year, and we didn't know what had happened to him. So this many networks across the world that are still showing interest and have done stories about Omran, it tells me that there's somebody out there who's wanting to bring the story in a larger context. Hopefully somebody is going to do some sort of a motion picture or some sort of a large-scale media promotion, like a film or something, that they'll tell the world all the facts of what happened to Omran from the time he was hurt to the time that he finally decided, at least his father, that the story was something he didn't want to remember. So that's why he cut off all the communication he has done since. He wants a normal life, and I understand that, but to leave it where you just know he's okay and that's the end of the subject is like saying, you know, he doesn't want to share with people anymore any other facts, and it leaves a lot of closure left open about certain things that should have been talked about in those few months from June of 2017 until the end of that year and into the early part of 2018. That was the only chance anybody had to communicate with Abu Ali or any other people that knew Omran who did interviews with him. And now you're not getting any feedback even from the people who still are actually still on Facebook and on Twitter. You don't hear anything more from those people. So hopefully, if I can continue to reach out to people and share how I feel about this little boy, little Omran, maybe other people will have other facts and they'll continue sharing, and then we can keep the public aware of what did happen to him. Every day on Facebook I get more and more views from people who see my channel or my page and they go on and they just want to know what happened. And that's very encouraging, because it means there's a lot of other people who knew about what happened and they don't intend just to forget about it. They want to know what happened to him if they never did look into it or find out facts about what did take place. And that's my hope. The more interest people have in this story, the more chance there'll be that his father will re-establish that contact with everybody that he knew, who asked questions about Omran, about what had happened to his family, what is happening today. He was willing to share photographs of his children, and though he wants to go on in life, at least he could try, I think, to see how much what happened to his family affected millions, billions of people around the world. That's my hope. Share, continue to reach out, hope someday Omran's father will again try to communicate with the world and say, this is how we're doing today. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for anything except the opportunity to continue to share how I feel about this little boy, little Omran, with his father and with his family. Because I truly say this, I do love and I care about his family, because I know how hard it's been for them, about the attack, about how the public was seeing this one side of the story, and then he's told everybody since then that he was exploited. He said, I did not ever realize until after the fact that they had done this to help their cause, and that it wasn't just to show the suffering of the Syrian people of these attacks. It wasn't his intention that he would allow them to photograph Omran or any of his family for that reason. He said, I didn't even know they were doing it. So what I'm saying to Omran's father, if you're watching this, what he went through, little Omran, it affected so many millions of people all around the world. And we don't want this subject to go away, because we know it continues in other places besides just in Aleppo. I'm sure it happens in Damascus, it happens in Lebanon, it happens in Cairo, it happens in Tel Aviv, it happens everywhere. All it did is to open up the eyes of the world to the suffering of the children themselves, to this little boy, to the others who are hurting and suffering from these horrible acts of hate and war, and just the downright inhumanity of children being exploited for one reason or another. And I don't really ever want that to be something that people forget about because it's still going on today. So if you have children, and I don't, I have no children, I have no wife, I would say to you, watch more of the videos I post, but hug your children every day. Appreciate them, love them, care about them, because I know Abu Ali cared enough about his son that he said, I want the world to know what happened to him. I want the world to know what happened to my family. But then it went so far with that, and then he just cut it all off. He stopped. And I think the world wants to know because they care about him. They care about his family. They care about Omran himself, how he's doing, how he's continued on in his life since it happened. And that's my prayer, is that his father will reach out. His father will try to communicate with the world in the years to come about what's happening to Omran. My personal prayer is that I might hear from Omran himself when he gets older. He might reach out and share of how he felt that night in the ambulance. He has said to a Swedish reporter, I was not scared. I was not, he wasn't worried of what was going to happen to him, because I'm sure he felt he was safe now. He was no longer in that situation where they were going to bomb his house. When the bombs went off, his father said he was thrown underneath their sofa. And he said the only thing I wanted to do at that moment was to get them out of the house, get them out of that predicament where the building could come down on him, and he wanted everybody, all of his children were brought out first. And then as soon as he was able to escape with his wife, he did. And thankfully all of his children, his wife, all of them are safe today. That's of about 3-4 months ago. But we don't know what's happening to him since that time, but I'm just hoping that Omran's father will reach out to us again in the future. And if he does, then it'll give us the chance to always share and continually reach out to him and say, we're not going to forget what this little boy, what little Omran went through. And it might upset some people to see this photograph of him, but it is a testament to the suffering that continues to this day in every place on earth, about men, women, children, who continually are suffering in these situations. And that's why I'm continuing to share about Omran, because I don't want people forgetting about what happened in Aleppo. People kept saying different ages. Omran was 3.5 when this happened. And now he's almost 6 years old. And as he grows older, I hope he'll never forget what happened to him. Every moment he was in that ambulance, every moment that he was in his home recuperating, his head healing, everything, that he might one day recollect all of this and share it in some way, either through a motion picture or through some video on the internet, that he would tell people how he felt and what he went through. It's so hard getting translations a lot of times from what his father shares. Some do translate it into English and other languages, but then some don't. So it's like you are left to hope and pray you can figure out what he was saying in those situations. To this day, I have an audio of Omran the day that his father came forward and told the public what had happened to him, and I still have no translation of what he said. I still have no idea what he said in that video. It was done by one of the reporters from Syria who knew his father, and he had all of his children to go on basically a smartphone, and he asked Omran different questions. And we can only assume Omran was saying, I was hurt, I'm okay, or, I'm just speculating what he said. I don't know what he said, but I'm hoping somebody one day will translate what Omran said in the interview. And it only lasted at most maybe a minute, not even that. The video was very shaky. His hand was shaking it back and forth because he's trying to hold it while they're filming Omran and his siblings. And we still don't know what he said. to this day. So I'm hoping that all these facts will come about over time. We'll find out what these things were, what he said, what happened, how his father feels to this day about what he wants the world to know about what happened to his family, to the Dagnish family, what it was that made Omran so important. Not just the fact we saw him, but that this is an ongoing tragedy all over the world about suffering, the suffering of children, suffering of men and women. And I strongly feel, like so many others, that we must keep this in the public eye. We have to share, we have to talk about this little boy, because if we don't, then it means more and more children will be hurt and killed, and what he suffered would be in vain, that nobody would know anymore or remember what Omran went through. And for me, I'm never going to forget what I saw when I saw that little boy in that ambulance. I'm never going to forget that. And I hope that none of you will ever forget it either.
لا تطلع.
معمران دقنيش.
قديش عمرك؟
4 سنين.